Hello everyone, I'm making this video to give you my thoughts on the latest expansion of Star Wars The Old Republic, Knights of the Fallen Empire. It is currently in early access, coming out this Tuesday, and in short, I like it, but I want to go first into the things I don't like and then go to the things I like. I'll start off without spoilers, and when I get to the spoilers section, I will warn you, so you can stop watching if you want to. Okay, so I assume everyone who's watching this video already knows, but basically it's 9 chapters, and each chapter is similar to just the main story of one planet in the first 3 chapters of the level 1 to 60 story. There are almost no side missions, it's very heavy on cutscenes and dialogue, and that's basically it. Okay, so let's start with the things I don't like first and then with the things I like. The first thing I disliked was that the gameplay was not made more enjoyable than it was before. The cutscenes certainly are, and the conversations, but when you go out of one and you start fighting your way till you get to the next section where you have a cutscene, the excitement always drops. You get the same packs or waves of enemies that do the same things, that are not challenging at all, and it's boring, basically. The gameplay sections are thankfully not very large, so you don't have to wait too much between the interesting parts, but for the most part, it's not very interesting. Like, there was one chapter where a certain companion is making remarks back from the ship while you're on the planet, and that was cool because you had something interesting to listen to during the gameplay sections, but for the most part, they were not very enjoyable, and thankfully not very long as well. I also felt like there could have been some more gameplay and story interaction. There was a little bit. At one point you can use a certain character's power and use their abilities. You actually get some new abilities. That was cool, but I would have liked to have seen that a little more. Like, there was a part where you had to shoot a weapon from a ship, and it all happened in a cutscene. There were several times where you get overpowered in a cutscene, like you're winning the gameplay section when you're fighting let's call him a boss, but then a cutscene plays and they overpower you, and it feels kind of like cheating because in gameplay you're beating them, but then in the cutscene they're beating you. Yeah, so there's that. There was something else which was somewhat prominent in the first chapters, but as the chapters progressed, it didn't happen that often, so I don't think it's that bad overall. It's that thing where lines in dialogue play too quickly one after another. That's like... In fact, I'll try to demonstrate what I mean right now. I'll edit my voice so that the natural pauses in between lines are somewhat missing, and you'll realize what I mean. Like I said, I think this issue was present in the first few chapters. As the game progressed, it slowly decreased. I don't know why they left it there. I think it's somewhat obvious. I remember a few examples during the Emperor talking, Emperor Valkorion, but oh well, that's enough for that. Okay, and I'll stop doing the edits now. I'm sure you got what I mean. So I think these are my 2 main dislikes for now. On the bright side, the story is surprisingly interesting. Now, I admit that I had low expectations. I managed to keep my hype as low as possible. I didn't want to get disappointed, and I'm pleasantly surprised. The story is really interesting. It kept me on my toes, interested in what will happen next. There were surprises, there were funny moments. It was just good. I enjoyed playing through it. I enjoyed replaying it. So there is real value in the story. The characters are well done, well voice acted as well. There are some weird new animations where you make these weird faces, but well, it's alright, I suppose. Lana Beniko has her model upgraded. It still feels kind of strange. Hers and should I name the... Yeah, I can make the sister of the brother. What was her name? Daughter of Valkorion, Valen? Yeah, Valen. Valen and Lana Beniko still look like kind of like beta versions of what the characters should look. If you take KOTFE, for example, he looks much better than they do. I don't know why that's a thing, but without spoiling the story, it's just pretty damn interesting. There were very few points, I think only 2 things in the story that I find a little inconsistent, but everything else is just pretty well done. Some things are left as a mystery, as something that's yet to be revealed, but it's not frustrating, it's interesting, it's well done. Now let's get to the spoiler section so I can tell you what I found inconsistent and how I think it could have been fixed. One was Valen. Now, we see several times that her power is enormous. Like she's been moving objects when she was an infant. In fact, when she was still in her mother's womb, we see her tearing apart gigantic metallic doors. We see her force pushing your main character like 50 meters away or so, just flying into the air. And then in chapter 8's ending, she fights her mother, and she uses none of that. Like, her mother wins the duel, sort of, but Valen just waves around her lightsaber and does none of that. I don't know, maybe she's doing it on purpose, I don't know. It just felt strange. I was like, okay, is it now time to use your superpower? No? Okay. That was one of the things that I found inconsistent. And the other one was where you get stabbed by Arkan if you refuse his father's power, and you survive. You survive without any real issues. And that was... and I mean, before that, it's already established that stabbing you through the gut with a lightsaber kills you without a doubt. Valkorion died this way. Valen killed multiple knights that way. Arkan killed the leader of the Scions, Heskel I think was his name, again using the same method, and then all of a sudden the main character survives it without any issue. Now I think in that particular moment it would have been better if, you know how HK died sacrificing himself right before that? Well, how about the Emperor showing up at the point where HK is about to sacrifice himself, and if you accept his power, HK will not have to sacrifice himself, and if you don't accept it, then HK will have to sacrifice himself. This way, you'll not have to go through the plot hole in your gut, but you know, you have some more meaningful short-term consequence of accepting or refusing the power. Apparently, they don't have any future ideas for HK since they killed him off, so he could just stay a companion that does nothing special other than fight by your side if you choose to, or die. Or if they plan on bringing him back somehow, then they'll bring him back if he died, and he'll just show up if he's alive. So I think that would have been better instead of stabbing you through the gut and doing nothing. And there was another choice that people complained about in the comments, and I sort of agree with them. They wanted Lana Beniko to die if you didn't accept Valkorion's power the first time. I agree partially. Now, obviously Lana Beniko is a main character and a very important one. Killing her off at that point would have been problematic. I was 99% sure that refusing the power will not result in her death. However, again, give us some more meaningful, more dramatic, short-term result of that choice. What happens now is she gets injured, and in her next cutscene you see her hand with a lightsaber cut on it. Instead, what I could have done is, if you refuse the power, they end up, say, cutting off her hand or cutting off her leg. And then she survives and you repel the attackers. And then the next cutscene, what happens instead is you go to some sort of a med bay of the ship, and HK is putting cybernetic leg or cybernetic hand on her. And you don't need to show this thing because, you know, they don't have the technology to show it properly, but whatever, you know, they put it on, and then you get the chance to say something like, I'm sorry, I left myself be surrounded by these guys, I couldn't help you, I should have helped you. And then she could respond something like, it's okay, you didn't have a choice, you couldn't have done anything, when in fact you could, and that could have been like a very strong emotional impact on you and the character and the player, and a real price to pay for refusing the influence of Valkorion. But instead, you know what happened. So yeah, what else did people criticize? I think they criticized in my comments the fact that the villains are somewhat one-dimensional. And by the way, I made a video about Arkan after seeing the trailer, and basically my idea was that he's gonna be a pretty simple, straightforward and not very interesting villain. I think it's turning out to be true, but here's why I'm okay with that, because there is a good contrast between them and Valkorion. Valkorion is quite the opposite of them. He is, to my knowledge and in my opinion, extremely interesting and mysterious. So I'm fine with having them being more narrow-minded, just kill everything in our path type of villains, if you have more of a mastermind in the face of Valkorion. So for now, the way the story goes, it's not really about Arkan and his sister, it's more about you, your friends, building the alliance, relationship with Valkorion maybe. If the focus remains that, I'm fine with the brother and sister being simpler villains. So, what else is there to talk about? Haven't played much post the story, the KOTOR type conversations. Initially when I saw the first one when talking to Dr. Ogorob, I was like, oh my god, BioWare's trolling. I thought they just made one conversation that looks like KOTOR. But no, that's a thing now. We'll have to wait and see. The conversations themselves are enjoyable, but the things you have to do in between them are not. So, the companion reunions were interesting, but a little short. Like, it felt like the companions were not really happy or surprised to see me. Maybe it's because I was a jerk to them, you know, with my Darkside Sith Inquisitor. Apparently, correct me if I'm wrong, but some companions are not yet in the game, like Kira Carson or Vet. I don't know, I haven't seen any missions to recruit them or something, so I hope they make a grand return in one of the future chapters. I really don't want to have such KOTOR type conversations with, especially with romance characters. I want something bigger, something more dramatic. But yeah, Knights of the Fallen Empire is a great step forward for the game. It's what, in my opinion, should have been the way they continue the story, the quality of it, and the presentation, instead of Rise of the Cartel and what was it, Shadow of Revan. I'm really hoping that the chapters that are to come are just as good, even better. And yeah, and I hope this is a sign that there is still hope in the Old Republic. And what else can I say? Stay tuned for chapter 10. Tell me what you think about all these things I've talked about. I've spent most of this time talking about negative things, but I mean, the story is interesting. You know, it keeps you want to know more, want to play more, want to play the other characters. So instead of telling you why it's good, you should go and try it yourself. That was it. Thank you for watching, and until next video, stay tuned and be good.